Somewhere in a forest you have walked through, a tree is already dead. It still has leaves. It still casts a shadow across the trail. The tree just hasn't found out yet. The killer is an insect smaller than a grain of cooked rice, and it has erased hundreds of millions of trees across an entire continent. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how and why the forest never saw it coming. Host or hijacker. No one is safe. Its name is the emerald ash borer, a beetle smaller than a grain of cooked rice, the color of polished jade. In its native Asia, it's a harmless footnote, kept in check by ash trees that spent millions of years learning to fight it. Then in the 1990s, it crossed an ocean on wood, stowed in shipping pallets, and slipped into Michigan. By the time anyone identified it in 2002, it had been breeding here for a decade. And here is the terrible part. North America's ash trees had never met this enemy. No defenses, no inherited memory, no chemistry to repel it. To the borer, this wasn't a forest. It was an open buffet stretching from Canada to the Gulf. Billions of trees, every one a host that didn't know it was already on the menu. Now, here is the question that should bother you. How does an insect you could lose in the palm of your hand kill a tree the size of a building? Because a mature ash is not fragile. It can be 80 feet tall. Its trunk can be wider than a person. It has survived droughts, ice storms, lightning, and decades of hungry deer and disease. You could take an axe to it and swing all afternoon and barely mark it. A single beetle weighs less than a raindrop. By every measure that should matter, size, strength, mass, this is not a fair fight. The tree should win without noticing. And yet across more than 30 states, the ash are not winning. They are vanishing. Entire streets of them, entire swamps of them, gone. So the borer is not overpowering these trees. It can't. It is doing something far more precise, finding a single fatal weakness hidden in the way every tree is built. And to see that weakness, you first have to understand what is actually keeping a tree alive. So what is the weakness? What if you could kill a tree the size of a building by cutting one layer thinner than a sheet of paper? Because here is the strange truth. A tree is mostly dead already. The vast bulk of that trunk, the hard heartwood at its core, is just scaffolding, cells that died long ago. The living tree is only a thin sleeve wrapped around that scaffold, right beneath the bark. And the most important part of that sleeve is a layer called the cambium. This is the tree's circulatory system. Sugar made in the leaves flows down through it to feed the roots. Water drawn up by the roots flows back to the crown. It is the one bridge between the top of the tree and the bottom. Sever that bridge, and the crown can no longer feed the roots, and the roots can no longer water the crown. Both halves starve and dehydrate at once, while the wood itself still looks perfectly healthy. The emerald ash borer has evolved to do exactly one thing. It eats that bridge. But the truly chilling part isn't the adult beetle you might catch in the sun. It's what the adult leaves behind. Because the real hijacker hasn't even hatched yet. In early summer, the adult female lands on the bark of an ash and lays her eggs in the cracks and crevices, sometimes dozens of them, tucked into the grooves where nothing will notice. The adults nibble a few leaves, but they are almost harmless. They are not the weapon. They are the delivery system. When the eggs hatch, the larvae, pale, flattened, segmented grubs, do not crawl outward into the world. They chew inward. They bore straight through the bark and into that thin living layer, and there they begin to feed. And as each larva eats, it does not tunnel in a straight line. It winds. It carves long, looping S-shaped galleries that snake back and forth through the cambium, packing them behind it with sawdust and waste. Picture a single larva tracing a slow signature across the inside of the tree. Now picture hundreds of them, on every square foot of trunk, all carving at once. Each gallery slices through the vascular tissue, like a knife scoring a pipe. The tree tries to heal, to grow new tissue around the wounds, but it cannot grow fast enough. The galleries multiply, they overlap, and slowly, invisibly, they begin to close a ring around the tree. But stay with me, because everything I've shown you so far is just the wound. It isn't what kills the tree. The actual moment of death has a name, A single, clinical word foresters reach for when a 200-year-old giant crosses the line where nothing can save it. Once you understand what that word really means, you will never look at a healthy tree the same way again. That word is girdling. To girdle a tree is to cut a complete ring through its living layer, all the way around the trunk, severing the circulatory system on every side at once. Do that, and nothing the tree does can save it. The crown is cut off from the roots. The roots are cut off from the crown. It is a slow, total starvation, and it is precisely what an infestation of borer larvae achieves, not with a blade, but with thousands of tiny winding tunnels that finally connect. The forest's oldest, tallest ash, trees that were already standing before your grandparents were born, are killed from within over the course of just 2 to 4 years. From the trail, you would never know. The leaves come out a little thinner. One spring, the crown looks a little sparse. The tree sends out desperate sprouts low on its trunk, a last gasp of survival. And then, the following year, it doesn't leaf out at all. The hijacker has already moved on, flying off to lay eggs in the next tree before the first one has even finished dying. And the tree doesn't just die quietly. It is signed. When the larvae finally mature, they chew their way back out, and each one leaves a mark you can read from the trail. Every exit hole is a tiny, perfect capital D pressed into the bark. A forest of ash riddled with D-shaped holes is a graveyard with the cause of death stamped on every headstone. And the scale is what stops you cold. The emerald ash borer has killed hundreds of millions of ash trees across North America, and by some estimates, it is on track to functionally erase the most common ash species across their entire range. In some hardwood forests, ash was one in every 5 trees. Along countless city streets, it was the tree of choice, planted by the millions because it grew fast, gave deep shade, and asked for nothing. All of it vulnerable. And the loss doesn't stop with the trees. Dozens of insect species depend on ash and nothing else. Birds lose nesting sites. Streams once shaded by ash grow warmer, changing the water itself. One beetle the size of a rice grain reaches up through an entire web of living things, pulls a single thread, and the whole tapestry shifts. And the ash borer is not alone. To the west, a native insect called the mountain pine beetle has chewed through tens of millions of acres of pine forest, burrowing under the bark and carrying with it a fungus that helps overwhelm the tree's defenses. A hijacker that brings its own accomplice. Across the world, beetle by beetle, forests that took centuries to grow are being unwritten in a few short seasons. This is the pattern this channel keeps returning to. The most devastating predators in nature are almost never the biggest. They are the ones that have learned exactly where to cut. The borer never tries to overpower the tree. It simply finds the one layer that matters and severs it. It turns a giant into a host, a structure that is still standing, still shaped like a living thing, while its true function has already been hijacked from the inside. The tree becomes a monument to its own quiet defeat. Strength was never the point. Precision was. And precision is what makes a creature this small the deadliest thing in the forest. Here is the thought I want to leave you with. The most successful of these beetles never had to evolve a single new weapon to conquer a new continent. The emerald ash borer is not stronger here than it was at home. It is exactly the same insect. What changed was the host. It arrived in a place where the trees had never learned to fear it, and that absence of fear, that missing defense, was the only opening it needed. It didn't win because it became more dangerous. It won because it found a forest that didn't know it should be afraid. So the next time you walk a trail lined with tall, healthy, ordinary trees, consider how little you can actually see. Consider that the most important battles in that forest are happening in a layer thinner than paper, in total silence, where size means nothing and the only thing that decides who lives is whether the host ever saw the hijacker coming. Most of the time, it doesn't. If a beetle the size of a rice grain can quietly hollow out a forest from the inside, then nothing you see in nature is as safe as it looks. And we are only getting started, because not every hijacker waits in the dark under the bark. Some of them advertise. In the next video, I want to show you a plant that doesn't hunt by accident. It lures insects in with color and scent and the promise of a meal, then traps them, drowns them, and digests them alive while they are still moving. A predator rooted to the ground that has turned patience into a weapon. Subscribe, and it will be the next thing you watch. Until then, remember the rule that holds true in every forest, on every trail, beneath every quiet patch of bark. Host or hijacker, no one is safe.